Think about your business. Think about what your business looked like yesterday. Orders came in, you processed them, products went out the door, or services got scheduled, or work got done. You sent invoices, customers called, and somebody picked up. The whole machine turned over, the way it does every day. Now imagine that tomorrow is go-live day for your new system. The switch gets flipped, and suddenly you can't take orders, or you can't see what needs to ship, or your invoice module isn't connecting, or a customer calls with a question and nobody can pull up the record. For a large enterprise, a rough go-live is inconvenient. They have IT teams, help desks, backup resources, and the organizational capacity to absorb a bad day. For a small or mid-sized business, a bad go-live day doesn't just cause frustration, it costs money. It costs real customers, real trust that you've spent years building. And most small businesses walk into go-live day hoping the system works. And they don't have a clear plan about what to do when part of it doesn't. Today, I want to give you that plan. Specifically, a 3-part framework for identifying the things your business can't afford to lose at go-live, protecting those things before the switch gets flipped, and making sure your business keeps running even if something doesn't quite go as expected. Because here's the truth. The goal of a go-live isn't a perfect system on day one. The goal is a business that keeps operating no matter what. Welcome to End Business Tech Frustration, the podcast for small and mid-sized business leaders and entrepreneurs who are struggling with technology that is not meeting their business needs. I'm Jim Kenyon, and for more than 35 years, I've helped businesses fix their tech, align their people and processes, and implement systems that actually work. In each episode, I break down real stories, practical strategies, and simple frameworks that help you choose the right tools, roll them out the right way, and build a business that runs smoothly. If your technology isn't supporting your business and delivering the results that you need, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Here's what I've seen happen with small and mid-sized businesses when a go-live doesn't go as planned. The system isn't talking to the shipping platform the way it should, so nobody knows what needs to go out today. The warehouse is stacked with product. The orders are in queues, and the team is standing around trying to figure out what to do. Or the invoice module isn't configured correctly, so orders are shipping, work is being done, but invoices aren't going out. And in a small business, that's not a back office inconvenience. That's a cash flow problem that shows up fast. Or a customer calls with a question. Their order, their history, their account, and the person who picks up the phone can't access it because the data migration isn't complete. So they have to tell the customer they'll call them back. And then they have to go and find the answer in a system that may or may not be accessible anymore. These aren't hypothetical scenarios. I've walked into these types of situations. And what I can tell you is that in every case, the problem isn't that the technology failed. The problem was that nobody had asked the right questions before go live. In a small business, there's no buffer. There's no IT team to call. There's no recovery crew that can show up at 8 a.m. to sort things out. There's just you and your team and a business that needs to keep running. So that's why this matters. That's why the plan has to exist before go live, not after. So I've worked a lot with small and mid-sized businesses through technology transitions. And the ones that come through go live well aren't the ones with the biggest budgets or the most sophisticated technology. They're the ones that took the time to answer 3 specific questions before they flipped the switch on the system. 1, what are the things in my business that absolutely can't stop? What am I going to do before go live to ensure that these things are protected? And if something goes wrong, what's my plan to recover? Those 3 questions are the framework. Now, let me walk you through each one. Identify your critical functions. The first step is deceptively simple, and it's the one that most organizations skip because they assume they already know the answer. So, write down the things your business cannot operate without, even for a single day. Not the things you prefer to keep running. Not those things that would be inconvenient to lose. The right things, the things instead that, if they stopped working at 9 a.m. on go live day, would immediately cost you revenue, customers, and the trust that you've built with those customers. In most small and mid-sized businesses, the list looks something like taking orders. This is the front door to your business. If a customer tries to place an order and something fails, whether it's a broken checkout, a form that doesn't submit correctly, an email that doesn't arrive, the customer may not try again. In a small business, every order counts. You cannot afford to lose them at a moment when you're also managing a system transition. 2, processing orders to ship. So taking the order is step 1. Getting it out the door is step 2. If your fulfillment workflow is broken, if the warehouse can't see what it needs to ship, or the packing list isn't generating, or the labels won't print, the product sits, and the customer waits. And in a competitive market, a customer who waits without an explanation is going to find someone else. Invoicing. For many small businesses, invoicing is how cash enters the building. If work is going out the door, but invoices aren't going out, or they're going out incorrectly, or they're not being received, or the payment link is broken, you have a cash flow problem that compounds every day you don't fix it. Next, responding to your customers. When a customer calls or emails with a question about their order, their account, a problem they're experiencing, they need an answer. In a small business, your reputation rests on the quality of that response. If your team can't pull up a customer record, they can't see their history, they can't access the information that they need in order to help that customer, that interaction goes badly. And a bad interaction at go live is particularly costly because the customer is already paying attention. Now, your list may look different. You may have a billing process that runs on a specific day of the week. You may have a scheduling system that your field team depends on. You may have a reporting workflow that a key customer requires. Whatever those things are, write them down specifically, by name, with enough detail that someone else on your team could read that list and know exactly what you mean. That list is not a wish list. It's your go-live protection target. Everything in the next 2 steps flows from that list. So next, protect your critical functions. Once you know what can't stop, the next question is, what could interrupt it? And what are you going to do about that before go live day arrives? This is where small and mid-sized businesses often underinvest. They focus on getting the system ready. They run training. They test the functionality, but they don't build a specific protection plan for the things on their critical list. And that's the gap that turns a manageable problem into a crisis. Map what each critical function depends on. For every item on your list, ask, what does this require in order to work? What data has to be in place? What integrations have to be talking to each other? Who on your team has to be trained and ready? What vendor has to have completed their piece of the configuration? When you do this honestly, you find risks you didn't know were there. And that's the point. You want to find them now, not at 9 a.m. on Go Live day. So take action before Go Live to reduce those risks. For a small business, this often means doing things ahead of schedule that you wouldn't normally do. And it's worth it. Communicate to your customers early. If you have regular customers, people who order from you on a schedule or who depend on consistent service, tell them a system transition is coming. Set their expectations ahead of time. Give them a direct contact if they have a question or a concern during that transition. A customer who's informed and prepared is far more patient than one who is surprised. Fill orders early if you can. If your fulfillment workflow is at risk during the cutover, get ahead of it. Process and ship what you can before the switch is flipped, so that the pressure on the new system on day one is lower. You're not trying to avoid using the new system. You're buying yourself runway to work through the issues without customers waiting. Build a short-term inventory buffer. This means that if your supply chain or inventory visibility is part of the transition, having more product on hand before you normally would means that even if the system takes a day or two to stabilize, you can still fulfill. For a small business, this is often the difference between a go-live story and a go-live disaster. Define your readiness criteria in writing before go-live. This is the part that catches most small businesses most often. They get to a go-live day, and the honest answer to, is it ready, is, we think so. That's not a readiness standard. That's a hope. For each critical function, define the specific things that have to be true before you go live. Not, the testing went okay. Not, it seems to work. Real criteria. The order entry form has to complete a test transition end to end. The fulfillment integration has to generate a packing list and a shipping label without manual intervention. The invoice has to send from the new system and land in the customer's inbox correctly. Someone has to sign off that they've personally confirmed that. If you can't measure it, you can't know that it's ready. And if you do not know it's ready, you are making a bet on your business. And for a small business, that's not a bet worth taking. Next, define your backup plan. This third step is the one leaders resist most. Not because it's difficult, because it forces them to say out loud that something might go wrong. I'm asking you to say that out loud anyway, because in 35 years, the vast majority of go-lives don't go as planned. And the businesses that come out successfully are the ones that plan ahead, have teams that know exactly what to do when something unexpected happens. For each critical function, define your fallback. If the system can't take orders on Go Live, how do you take them? Phone, email, a shared spreadsheet your team can fill out and reconcile later? Whatever the answer is, document it, put it somewhere your whole team can find it. And make sure everyone knows it exists before they need it. For a small business, this is usually simpler than it sounds. You took orders before the system existed. You may have used a different process, a different tool, a different spreadsheet. That process is your fallback. It doesn't have to be elegant, it just has to work. If you can't process shipments through the new system, what's the process for getting orders out the door anyway? Who calls the warehouse? Who prints the packing list manually? Who contacts the carrier? Write it down, assign the step, and make sure that people involved know their role before go-live day. If invoicing is down, what's the interim process for making sure invoices go out? Can your team generate them from the previous system temporarily? Can they be created manually and tracked in a spreadsheet until a new system is stable? Decide that in advance, because trying to figure it out in the moment when your customers are waiting and the team is already stretched is how errors happen. Assign ownership by name. This is critical for a small business because in a lean team, it's very easy for everyone to assume that somebody else is handling something until it becomes clear that nobody is. So every backup plan needs a name on it. Who activates that fallback process if the system isn't working? Who communicates to customers if there's a delay? Who escalates to a vendor if the issue isn't resolved? Who is responsible for confirming when the primary system is back and stable? One name per function, not a department, not the team, just a specific person. Set your thresholds. Define in advance the specific point at which you invoke the backup. Not when things get bad, a real threshold. If order entry isn't functioning within 30 minutes of go live, we switch to a manual process. If the fulfillment integration isn't confirmed by noon, we will put the packing lists out manually. If the invoicing issue isn't resolved by the end of business day 1, we send interim invoices from the previous system and then reconcile it later. Thresholds remove the hardest part of go-live day, the judgment call made under pressure, with incomplete information by people who are already stressed. When the threshold is met, the action happens. Automatically, no debate, no, let's give it a little more time. The backup activates, the business keeps running, and your team can focus on resolving the issue instead of managing the chaos it's causing. So, before I wrap up, I want to leave you with a few questions. If you have a go-live coming up, whether it's next month or later, these are worth sitting down and working through with your team. Have you written down your critical functions? Not assumed them, actually written them down by name with enough detail that your whole team knows what you mean. Have you mapped what each critical function depends on and taken specific action to protect against those risks before go-live day? Have you defined measurable readiness criteria for each critical function? Criteria that somebody has to confirm in writing before you flip the switch. Does every critical function have a documented backup plan, a named owner, and a specific threshold that triggers that backup without requiring a judgment call under pressure? If the system doesn't work on day 1, does your team already know what to do? So here's what I want you to take away from today. You're running a small business. You don't have an IT department. You don't have a recovery team. You have a lean, capable team that is counting on you to make decisions, including this one, before the pressure arrives. You can't control whether the system performs perfectly on day 1. What you can control is whether your business keeps running when your system doesn't. Identify those critical functions, protect them, Build your backup plan. Do it before go live, not after. Because after is too late. Thanks for listening to End Business Tech Frustration. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe or follow the show so that you never miss an insight. And if your business is struggling with technology that doesn't support your goals, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear how technology is impacting your business, whether it's good, bad, or just downright painful. Remember, your technology should empower your people, strengthen your processes, and make your business thrive. If it's not doing that, I'm here to help you get your tech right and to get real value from it. See you in the next episode.